Okay, these are notes over solving one-step inequalities. These notes are for Tuesday, August the 31st. So we're going to basically solve inequalities, one-step inequalities, and the only difference with solving one-step inequalities versus an equation is that you have to graph your answer when you're finished. So we're going to give you some graphing tips, and then I'll do a few of the examples in the notes. Basically, when you're graphing an inequality answer, there's two different types of circles you can possibly have on your answer. If you have a less than symbol or a greater than symbol, you are going to graph with an open circle. And I'll show you what this looks like in just a bit on a graph. If you're graphing and your symbol is a less than equal to or a greater than equal to symbol, you're going to graph it with a closed circle. And that'll look like this. Again, it'll make more sense once we do an example in just a minute. Shading. You're actually going to draw an arrow or a shading space on the lines when you graph to show somebody who looks at your answer what the answer looks like. Basically, a graph is a picture of what your solution is. So if you have a symbol that's less than or less than equal to, you will be drawing your arrow or shading. You're going to shade to the left. And you'll notice that these arrows right here are kind of like pointers. They actually point to the left, so that's kind of a good indicator as to which way your shading goes. And likewise, if you've got a greater than or a greater than equal to sign, you will shade to the right. Now, there is a note down here at the bottom that says if your variable ends up on the right side of your final answer, flip the inequality over, and we call this the spatula method. It's just something that I've made up that will make it a little bit easier when you're doing the problems. When we get to one like that in just a moment, I will show you how to do that. All right, let me see if I can advance this. Let's go. Awesome. Okay. So our first example, x plus 7 is greater than 12. You would use normal solving methods by subtracting 7 from both sides. It's just like solving an equation. When you finish, you would get x is greater than 7 minus 12 is 5, so that would be your answer. When graphing, it's acceptable to put your value in the center, whatever graphing value you get. If you want to start with 0 in the center, you can, but sometimes if we have bigger numbers on our graph, it's just easier if we put our answer in the center. Always make sure to graph at least one number on either side so the person looking at your paper will have a good perspective as to where your answer is. And now we look at our symbol and say, okay, this is a greater than symbol. That means I'm going to have an open circle like I had a little while ago, like we described in our notes. And then I notice that this is a greater than symbol, which points to the right, so that's the way my shade will go. So you put your arrow out to the right, and make sure you put an arrow at the end so that it shows that basically my answer starts about 5 but then gets bigger. If you're playing the game, I'm thinking of a number in my head and the number that I'm thinking of is bigger than 5. This is just a pictorial representation of what that would look like. Okay, this problem, the next one, if I take the 5 on the bottom, b divided by 5, the opposite of divide would be multiply. So if I multiply both sides by 5, I'm going to get b is less than, how much would that be? Let's see, that's 25, carry the 2, 175. So b is less than 175. Again, put your 175 in the middle. Give numbers on either side for reference. We're going to have an open circle because it's just simply less than, and then this time our shading or our arrow will go to the left because it is a less than symbol. All right, I'm going to skip this problem right here. I can do it with you one-on-one if you need, but just for time's sake, I'm going to move to one where our variable is not on the right side. So let's move to the next example. 73 is less than or equal to k minus 5. Simple solving, I would go ahead and move the 5 over with the 73, which gives me 78. And then I've got my less than or equal to symbol, and then I've got my k. Now here's the dilemma with our answer written this way. It's fine and there's nothing wrong with it, but to be able to use this symbol as a pointer for our arrow, your K must be on the left side of the inequality. So this is where the spatula method comes in. It's kind of like we're taking just a regular spatula that you might flip pancakes with or something and scooping it up underneath our answer and then flipping the whole thing over. So when you do that, you'll end up with K is greater than or equal to 78. I like writing my answer this way because then it helps me with my graphing. This answer right here is acceptable. There's nothing wrong with it, but you just have to be careful that when you look at the inequality symbol that you point your answer in the right direction. So I'm going to write this, give my reference numbers. I will have a closed circle this time, and then my shading will go to the right. And again, I'm using that answer right there to show me which way my shading goes. All right, let's go to the back. I want to catch some with fractions. I know I skipped this problem right here earlier, and it's got a fraction in it. We want to remember how to do that, but I believe there's some on the next page also that contain fractions. So let's move to those and see. Let's move to those and see if we can't get more examples and then take some fraction ones as well. Now, there's a big note up here at the top, a reminder that says, do you remember when you learned how to graph inequalities that there was a rule about flipping the symbol? When you multiply or divide by a negative number, you always have to flip the symbol in your answer. That's just one of those mathematical steps that you've got to do to get your answer right. So let's see how that works. On this first example, we've got -6 is greater than or equal to 60. So if by doing simple solving, I'm going to divide by -6 because that's what you would do to get x by itself. So I've got x is, now our symbol right now is greater than or equal to, but because I divided by a negative number, our symbol is going to change directions and it's going to end up less than or equal to. And of course that would give us -10 as our answer. I'm going to have -10 in the middle. Make sure when you draw your number line that you number it correctly. -9 would go over here. -11 would go there. Remember, the negatives are backwards on the number line, so you have to make sure you reference it correctly. Close circle. I look at my symbol to see which way my shading goes, and on this one it goes to the left. All right, let's try a problem. Let's try a problem with a fraction. And actually, this one will be a great example to finish up with. Because it's got a fraction in it, it's also got a negative fraction in it, which means I will be dividing by a negative number, but it also has the letter on the right side, and we need our letter on the left side to be able to graph easier. So this one is a fantastic example that has lots of different elements to it. -3 over 2p right here means -3 over 2 times p, and the opposite of times is divide. So if I divide this side by -3 over 2, those double fractions always look kind of scary. That will simply cancel, and on this side I'm dividing by -3 over 2. We've gotten pretty good at the calculator, so if you have a calculator, you would type that in, 6 divided by, and then in parenthesis, -3 over 2. That's how you type it in. Now, let's say you're working at home and you don't have a calculator. If you do 6 divided by -3 over 2, you probably have been taught this maybe with a keep it, change it, flip it method, which if we work that out will give us -18 over 2. If you divide that out, you end up getting 9. So, as it stands right now, I've got P. I have my -9 answer, but I have to flip the symbol right here because I just divided by a negative number. So my symbol is going to change and face this direction. Now my final dilemma is that I want the P on the left side so that I can use that as an arrow for pointing to see which way my shade goes. So I'm going to take that spatula, flip the whole answer over. I would end up getting P is less than or equal to -9. -9 in the center, -8 here, -10 there, close circle, and shade to the left. And that's a couple of examples on graphing inequalities.